morning, everyone, and welcome to the Career Technical Student Organization Overview. We are going to talk today a little bit about some of the changes that began with Perkins 5 and how we are going to proceed with CTSO funding and reporting in the future. So we will begin really quickly. I'm going to get the presentation running for us. And I'm going to share my screen. All right. So again, good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining me this close to the holiday season, but I wanted to get this information out to everyone as soon as possible so we could begin our new time frame for awarding funds for the career and technical student organizations and getting our reporting process in place. So today we're going to talk about some of the programmatic and fiscal requirements, look at the application timeline and key components, talk about the components of the narrative and future reporting, some submission instructions, and then answer any questions that you might have. And again, the microphones will stay muted and the questions we'll put into the chat box on the side. The Career and technical student organizations, CTSOs, are, and I know you guys know this, but they're essential. They are some of the most amazing resources for students to teach them how to have hands-on soft skills, technical skills, communication. It is wonderful. I have been more impressed over the years with CTSO students than any other group that I have encountered. Some of the most amazing young people are a result of the CTSO. And so this powerful instructional tool helps support the curriculum, but it also builds and scaffolds a stronger base for that student to become that productive citizen, not only in the work, but also in the community. When Perkins 5 was reauthorized in 2018, the United States Department of Education revised their guidance. Part of Perkins 5 was changing the focus from stringent rules, or not really stringent, but very regimented rules, to flexibility, understanding that every state had somewhat different needs in how they approached CTE and how they approached other elements. And part of that flexibility also was in how the state education approached CTSO support. And so they lifted some of the guidance on what a CTSO was specifically categorized as, and thereby would have the potential to increase and fluctuate the number of CTSOs that are supported by the state. CTSOs are indeed an active part of the 16 career clusters, and we have the listing of those on our agency website. We have a hyperlink here, and we can also share that in the chat box for you. The current CTSOs that are supported and the clusters they support are listed here. Of course, the FFA, Skills USA, TSA, FBLA, BPA, DECA, HOSA, FCLA, all of these and the clusters they support. But as we discussed earlier, based on some of that guidance from the United States Department of Education, there are other curriculum-based opportunities that could be categorized as student organizations that do indeed support the clusters. So as this is funding based on federal dollars, the reporting requirements are a little bit more stringent and will need to be addressed. So what we've put into place is a timeline of the granting process. And so the application, which we're going to discuss today, will be due January 29th. So we're looking at the end of January every year is when the application will be submitted. And then February of every year, the notification of awards will go out to the applicant. A required semi-annual progress report will be due at the end of June, and then a final report will be due at the end of October every year. And these will be submitted to me so that we will have those accountability measures in place for our reporting to the federal government on the activities of the student organizations, because this has become a additional part of our annual reporting to the federal government. So, as I said, at the end of June, there will be a semi-annual progress report talking about how the grant increased industry awareness, the number of schools that were increased, the number of students increasing, how the organization's student competitions went or will be going, how the grant funds were spent for the students, any national student recognitions for officers and competitions, and any national advisor recognition. At the end of October, then a final published report, and we are asking that this be something that we can share. So, not just an Excel spreadsheet, but something that we can definitely share with stakeholders, because we are being asked by stakeholders what we're doing with this funding and how it is impacting the students. So again, looking at how employer awareness is increased, the number of schools, are our stakeholders being brought in and working with the students? The number of students, are they increasing? By the end of October, the state competitions will have concluded for the previous year. How did those go? How were the funds spent for the students? Were there any national student recognitions? And were there any national advisor recognitions? And how did students place those competitions? These are great resources. We want to share them and highlight them for encouraging other students and other organizations across the state. So for this year, the deadline for the online application will be at 4 o'clock Friday, January 29. It is an online application. I have placed in the chat box for you the guidance, the CTSO guidance that I sent out to everyone earlier when I announced this webinar. I put it in the chat box for your reference, and it is available on our website for you. So let's talk about the online application. It will be comprised of the applicant information as far as the CTSO, the contact information, the authorized signer, programmatic, budgetary, and required forms. So when we look at these, and we're going to go over them more detail, but the online application is really going to ask you to explain how the funds will be used to support the student organization with direct support. Talk about any programmatic standards that they support. List the participation opportunities and the state and national events. A history of the program, both nationally and within the state. The leadership opportunities available to students. What service learning and community opportunities are available, especially now with COVID-19, what are the virtual opportunities available to students? And looking at future growth opportunities for the program and the career cluster. And so when you click on that online link, and I will share that as well in the chat once we finish, you'll come to a splash page that will welcome you. And of course, then you'll hit start. And I've screen captured all of these into the presentation for you, not only for your future reference, but I'll just also for a little bit more seamless access during today's conversation. So once you click on start, it's going to take you to the application itself, and it has 5 sections: contact section, programmatic planning, budget planning, required forms, and then of course the state advisor's signature. And something to remember is that these indeed are federal dollars that we are sharing. So there are specific elements that are required, and a little bit changing in the way the funding is going to be shared out in the future. So of course the CTSO name, and we've got a drop down for that. Right now it is the standard ones that have been supported in the past, but we will also be adding blanks in there for others to fill in. The state advisor information, and of course title, first name, last name, phone number, email, and then a physical address. And we ask that this be a physical address because we have to have the address on file, the physical mailing address, not a PO box, that the Duns and Bradstreet number matches. You must have an active Duns and Bradstreet number in order to receive the federal funds, and they must match the physical address. So if you have not renewed your Duns and Bradstreet number for this year, please contact me and we can I can help you with that, because it must be in place and active in order to receive federal funding. That is a federal law, and we have no flexibility on that. And then, of course, your tax ID number. The programmatic planning. Again, how will the organization use the funds for students to further their career and technical education programs? Give me a history of the organization. How will the funds be used to address the disparities in performance with the students? How will your CTSO address the needs of your special population students? Are they inclusive and open for others? Do they encourage? And how will the funds increase the number of students in the program? It's always very disconcerting when you see a CTSO begin to dramatically lose student numbers, and you want to look at it and try to figure out what the root cause is. So it's a good time to think about how the funds will be used to increase those numbers. And are they increasing the numbers? Look at an overview and an analysis of this organization's statewide competitions, how the funds will be used to support the students, and what are your CTSO's needs and how will the funds be used to address those needs? And as you're filling that out, just think about those SMART goals, trying to figure out who the population is. Are they measurable? Are they achievable, relevant, and are they time specific? These funds are federal, so they only are available for one year. So, you've got to really look and make sure that you're able to utilize those funds during the time frame in a relevant manner, and truly targeting the needs of the student organization. As these again are federal funds, you must supplement but not supplanting. So they can include but not limited to advisor, professional development, conference registrations, leadership development, curriculum. Now, here's something to be noted. The national uniforms, but they must be maintained either by the school or by the student organization. These are not for individual students to keep. The federal money cannot provide anything that is directly for the student as far as a uniform or a cord or a jacket. So the CTSO could have a series of jackets that the student officers could wear, but they're not for the student officers to take home and keep, if that makes sense. Things that the funding cannot cover would be those social activities, refreshments and meals, consumables, gifts, scholarships or donations or individual membership, conference hotel cost, items retained by the student, and student travel cost. And I know that you're seeing down there about theme parks, and you're probably laughing, but it has happened, and folks have had to pay money back. These are elements listed by the federal government that are definitely not allowable uses of funds. So in the application, you will have to build your budget, looking at salary, benefits, purchase services, supplies, material, any equipment that's going to be purchased, and objects. Please note that indirect costs are not allowed. At the bottom, then we'll have a W-9 form, and then an upload if you have any additional documentation you want to share with the application, any supporting materials, all of that saved as a PDF. And then, of course, at the bottom would be where the state advisor would sign and submit the form. Budget considerations, of course, being for state and national competition. There's professional development opportunities, ways to improve academic and CTE skills, career guidance for the students, and please do note indirect costs are not allowed. Before we go into this second part of the conversation, are there any questions? I'm going to share for a second. Yes, but yes, Matt, BT.
In your explaining of the approve and non-approval items, is there a pre-approved process where if a school had planned to do something to get it approved first before they move forward?
You're saying school. Now, this is not for a school. This is for the student organization as a whole.
Okay. Or even with student organization, it's something that they see that they want to do but not really sure. Is there a pre-approval process that they could submit to see whether or not it's legal or not?
They could send me an email, yes, sir. And I would ask that any communication be sent to me directly, please, so that we can discuss that ahead of time. Absolutely. Mr. Jones.
So what is the grant year specifically, start month, end month? Because with FBLA, we are on a July to June fiscal year. And I'm trying to figure out how that fits within our fiscal year.
Right. The federal funds are available from July 1 through September 31st. We will place the award in February with the understanding that if there are elements that are incurred July through, for this year, July through February, they would be covered. Going forward, it will overlap, so you shouldn't have that problem. The funds, however, are a 15-month grant, so they go July 1st through September 31st of the following year.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. Tammy? Or I see guest has their hand raised.
Maria, my hand said it couldn't raise on mine.
Okay,
Yeah.
Angel, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a question similar to somebody else that just asked about, why not the fiscal year, and you explained that. And so with the funding and the timeline that you put up on the calendar, is that within the same calendar year, or is that the following calendar year?
They kind of overlap. So for this year, they would do the application in February with the funding being retroactively available through July 1 of this year. And then going forward, it will always have that overlap, if you will.
Okay, so this is just going to be a unique year.
This is a unique year as far as having to do the retroactive covering.
Okay.
And then moving forward, while it's going to have the same timeline, the funding will cover.
Okay. All right. And then my other question was, is this going to be the same grant like we've received in the past, where we get maybe $8,000 to $10,000 or so?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when we submit our budget, you want our entire budget for our CTSO?
No, ma'am, just the funds you're asking for.
Okay, that's what I wondered. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I see someone else has their hand raised. But there's not
Hey,
a name.
Maria,
Yes.
Tammy.
Hey, yes, ma'am. Tam.
One of the things that we're looking at with TSA is, especially for this year, our conference is going to be totally virtual. We are looking at purchasing basically a virtual environment.
Mm-hmm.
Would these funds be, would that be an eligible type of expense where we're paying someone to create this environment for us in order to hold our competition?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, let's go into the second half, because this is the part where you guys might, be a little bit not as happy with me. Because these are federal funds, we can no longer send them out directly. They have to be built into GAPS. And I know that Pat and a couple others have over the years built the budgets in GAPS, but this is now an official requirement, and we have no flexibility to send these funds out directly. They must be built into GAPS. So once the application has been received and approved, and you receive the notice of the funding, you will then go into GAPS to build your budget. And I've placed in the chat bar a document on how to create a community account in GAPS if you have not created an account before. And what we'll do is I will be glad to work with you and help you get that set up. But I wanted to show you a little bit about how you would access it, and just make you aware that that will be a requirement for the funding. And in February, after we receive the notification of award to you, we will then do a webinar on GAPS itself to show you step by step how to get in there. And you access GAPS from the agency's front page. Up in the top corner, you'll see a login in that top right-hand part. And when you click on login, it will take you to the Member Center, where you will enter your information. And then at that point, one of the options you will see will be called GAPS. And in GAPS, you will then click on your finance bar right there, choose your grant, and build your budget. And as I mentioned earlier, this is not going to be, today we're not going to talk about it as much because I don't want to overwhelm you. What we will do in February is go through building a budget in GAP specifically, and what it will be to match the budget you built in FormStack and then submitted. But the key factor is with GAPS, you have to have 3 separate users because this application is connected directly to the state's banking system, if you will, there has to be a series of checks and balances. And so the three separate users, the first one would be the one to enter the budget, and then they would submit it to a second role who would then review it to make sure it's accurate and submit it to our office, in which Melissa Benton and I would then approve it. And as BT indicated earlier, if you have any questions on viability or approvability, please send me an email directly, and we can or give me a call and we can talk it through. I am more than willing to sit down and listen to ideas and talk you through them gladly. So then after the budget's approved, in order to claim the funds, the person who has that Kate finance role would then go in and enter the expenditure and then submit it to what they call the grants approver, who would then review the expenditure to make sure it's correct and submit it to the Office of Finance. And then those funds would be sent directly to you. And they would come to you directly through the banking system. So I know that was that part of it was a little bit fast, but I think that what I would like you to focus on right now is that online application and making sure that you've thought out what you're going to be building the budgets for and with, and in order to make sure that you are really offering the most for the students. And then the second part is to make note of those accountability reporting, both the mid-year and final reporting, and those would be sent directly to me. And those are, like I said, now mandatory by the feds, that we report on how the CTSOs are using the funds. And so if you have questions or concerns in regards to that reporting, I'm going to put my email address in the chat box. It's also available in the presentation, which I will be sharing with you immediately following the conversation. All right. And then my office number is always available. And I would love to sit down with you and discuss this. If there are, as BT mentioned, if you've got some questions or concerns about the allowability of something, let's talk it over. I am here for you. I've placed into, again, the chat, the CTSO guidelines, as well as the accessing gaps documentation. Let me show you that really quickly. Let's see if it'll let me share that screen for you. Bear with me. All right. Can you see that? Can you see that PDF? Yes? No?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, as I mentioned, you would, on the top corner, click on Login. Chrome is the best resource to use. It is the most stable and most supported by Microsoft and most of the other, even Apple, products for internet access. The website is ed.sc.gov. Once you click on Login, it is going to take you to a page that looks like this. It's called the Member Center. Up until this past July, we had only one way to enter the Member Center. You choose the option on the left, that application web portal. The Legacy Member Center is phasing out, and you will honestly not need to utilize it. We have kept it there for historical purposes, but it will be phasing out. At the bottom of that application web portal is where the GAPS entrance is. And you'll see that about halfway down the page. And you're going to see proceed to application web portal login. Now, before you'll come to this page and you'll enter a username and password. Well, most of you do not have access yet, and so you're going to need to create an account. So you're going to choose create account. And this is where I'm asking that each of you please create a community user account. And this statement is going out to Tammy and Ross and those who are the CTSO state advisors. This is where you would create your community account. And once you set up that community account, if you would please then contact me and let me know that you've done that, I can then link you directly to your CTSO on our web access, which would then give you the correct roles and GAPS. And also, when you reach out to me, please let me know what role it is that you're asking for. Because as I mentioned, there need to be 3 specific separate users for each CTSO, which I know is really a challenge. Pat Itter and I ran into that a couple years ago when we were first doing GAPS, because there were not 3 distinct individuals. What we're asking is that you please do make sure that you have the 3 separate users for GAPS for that checks and balances purposes. Once you have access to once you've given me the notice that you've created the account and I've linked you to GAPS, this will appear when you log in to the Member Center. You'll now see that button pop up, which would give you access to GAPS. And when you click on that, it will give you the screen with the option, and you'll always choose finance. You'll not have to worry about the application part. You're just going to choose finance. When you click on finance, it's going to ask you to choose your grant, and that is when your grant will pop down in the drop-down option. You would select it, and this is focusing on the colleges, but you would have the same access as far as your CTSO should appear, and you would then select it. You'll choose next. And then it'll take you to the Perkins splash page. Sometimes it looks a lot like it's not changed, but you've gone from GAPS, which is all of the different grants across the agency, to specifically your grant within the federal Perkins funding. And from there, you would then click on that finance tab again and choose budget. And this is where you would build your budget. And it would have a create new. And it will build your budget out for you. And then you would submit it to us. And then the same process is for creating and submitting the expenditure claims. Rather than clicking on the budget drop down, you would click on the expenditure drop down. Let's see right here. And like I said, we will discuss that in depth in February when we do a webinar focusing specifically on GAPS access. Stephen, I hope you have a wonderful day, sir. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here. So any questions or concerns you have right now? Yes, Ross.
So if I'm reading this right and the information right, there's a Perkins bucket that the State Department has been allocated for the CTSOs. And based on our applications, you're divvying this amount up among the CTSOs. The minimum obviously would be 0 if the application is reviewed and you feel that we don't qualify. What is the maximum?
Looking right now, the last couple of years, we were doing about 10,000. I think that's probably where we're going to stay at least this year, based on fiscal concerns with COVID and everything else that's going on. We're probably going to stay with that 10,000 as the max.
Okay.
With fingers crossed, hoping that the world improves around us, and that we could look at even 12,000 or 15 in the future. But right now, this year, sticking with that $10,000, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. Tammy, do you have an additional question?
No, I think I didn't figure out how to put my hand down, but
No problem.
I will probably give you a call to make sure that we've got our Duns and Bradstreet set up correctly. I
Mhm.
thought I renewed it, but I just want to make sure. So I'll give you
Absolutely.
a call sometime later.
Absolutely. And what we can do is we'll go together and just pull it up together and look at the status. The website's pretty user friendly, and it'll also tell you, if it has expired, when it was expired, and what's needed to get that going again. And honestly, it's usually just a matter of pushing a button. But if there's anything else needed, it'll let us know, and we can figure that out.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
I am too, and I'm tickled to get the reporting kind of online again, and just make sure that we are truly using our funds to help the students. All right. Any other questions anyone has for today? Very good. All right. So in review, the online application will be January 29. We'll notify you in February of the funding. We'll have a webinar in February in regards to GAPS access. After this presentation is over, I'm going to send you the PowerPoint, the CTSO document, and the Accessing GAPS document again, along with the link for the online application. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. And more importantly, I hope you each have a very happy and very healthy holiday season. Thank you all so much. Take care and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Angel. Mr. Jones, it was wonderful speaking to you earlier.
Yes,
Take care,
thank
sir.
you. Yeah, bye.
Bye. Dana and BT, have a great day, great holiday, you guys.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you, Maria. You do too.